Good evening, Michael. Welcome again to another podcast of Unlocking the Secrets to Expanding Human Potential.
Nailed it. Well done, brother.
We got it this time, yeah. 12 or 13 of these in, which is good. Yeah, so we've got a very special guest tonight. One person that I've been wanting to get on for a long time. I did his training last year in November. It's probably one of the most top 2 or 3 trainings that I've ever been to. It shifted something in me. As I said to you before, I spent half of the Saturday night crying because of the stories that come up. It was liberating. It was just an amazing time. So big welcome to you, Arne Rubinstein. Thank you for being part of a chat with us tonight.
Very happy to be here.
Now, for you, you've started this Rites of Passage and making of men, which I love because we need to have more of this in today's world. And reading up on some of the stuff today, you've helped, or something more than 250,000 people have been to your training session, something in, is it 50 or 20 countries? What got you to start all this? Tell us a bit about the story of how you got here and why, and the passion behind it.
Well, it probably started with my own teenage years that were a struggle. I had a beautiful mother who just wanted to keep cuddling me, and I got more and more uncomfortable with that. And I had a father who just wanted to tell me how to live my life, and I got more and more uncomfortable with that. And, basically in my teen years just sort of went out on my own and looked for as many stupid things as I could find and kind of found them. And on reflection, I probably just got through that period through luck rather than good management. And then I actually became a doctor, and I spent nearly 20 years in emergency medicine, and I consistently saw teenagers, especially boys, coming in who'd done seriously stupid things and were now in hospital, and with some of them there was a good chance that that stupid thing they'd done was going to affect them the rest of their lives. In fact, some of them didn't even make it to the hospital. I started I became interested in this, and actually got involved in some men's work, and we all said, wow, if there'd been something there for us when we were teenagers, our lives could have been so different. And something like 25 years ago, we ran a men and boys program for 27, some fathers, some sons, some elder mentors. We took a group away for 3 days, and something happened. Something profound happened, basically, when we let boys listen to the stories of men, when we let boys ask any questions that they wanted to ask, and when we challenged them about who they were, and finally, when we actually recognised and named the gifts and the talents and the genius we saw in each of them. It was a life-changing weekend for me. Then I discovered Rites of Passage and started looking at Rites of Passage, and soon found that, communities all over the world always created Rites of Passage for their boys and their girls when they reached puberty. And I became really interested in understanding that and understanding what they did, and looked at it from an academic point of view as well, and identified the key elements that were always in Rites of Passage, and started running them I was still working as a doctor, but I'd run one program a year, and I saw that the programs we were running were really changing lives, whereas what I was doing in emergency medicine was trying to save lives that probably didn't need to be there in the first place if things had been different earlier on. So cut a long story short, I ended up leaving medicine and going full-time into creating Rites of Passage for boys, and now it's spread for girls and people of all ages and all over the world, and it's only the beginning. I want to see this becoming normal once again, that every boy and every girl, when they reach puberty, that there's a community-based ceremony that celebrates and acknowledges the fact that they're becoming a young adult and they're needed in the community, they've got gifts to offer the community, and the community wants to support them to find what they really want to do with their lives and do it. There you go.
Beautiful.
Bit of a story.
It's right up your alley, Michael. This is the warm and fuzzy stuff that we love.
Yes.
And it's just for the uninitiated, because I was a friend of mine, Kane Johnson, put me onto this. He said, "Greg, you got to go and do this course because it's seriously off the chart, right?" And I looked into it and went, what? Because I had no idea what a rite of passage was. So, can you give us a bit of an idea of what that is and how it relates culturally and what we've lost out of Western society?
Sure. We might need a couple of days, but I'll try and condense it down in 50 minutes. That's all right. So a rite of passage is something that transforms us and changes us. Okay? And we will all go through rites of passage. Most of them are kind of unhealthy. And the rite of passage may be through an accident, or it may be through a drug overdose, or it may be through abuse, or bullying, or someone close to us dying, or an illness. All of those things that can change us. And then there's a healthy rite of passage that is facilitated by elders and people within the community that is designed to support you in a healthy way to step from being a child to an adult. And when I run my programs and I say to people, what event created a transformation and shifted you from being a child to an adult, I reckon 98% of people tell me a disaster story about something bad that happened to them and made them grow up. And very, very few actually have a good, healthy story. And so my interest is, how can we create that in a healthy way? But I also need to speak to something else, which is that I believe that life is like a staircase. And we're all on the staircase, and we start off as babies, and then we're children, then we're teenagers, young adults, grown-ups, hopefully elders, and some of us get married and become grandparents on the way, and we get different jobs, and we live in different places. So all of our staircases are different, but we keep moving, and we're supposed to keep moving on the staircase. We can't spend forever on one step. And rites of passage are designed to move us from one step to the next. So, we all know about initiations for boys and potentially for girls, but we need to be going through rites of passage. What's our next thing that we can be doing? And, I'm 56 years old. I'm moving towards elderhood. So what's the rite of passage that I go through to do that? So there are all these stages of life, and ideally we should regularly or periodically be going through rites of passage to help us move to the next stage. And by the way, they say that there's a period of agitation when you're ready to move. So we move up a step and we're in a new place, a new job, a new relationship, a new stage of life, and we're comfortable for a period of time that may be anywhere from months to years to decades, and then we start getting agitated and uncomfortable. And that's a sign that we're ready to move to something new. And once again, when I say to people, is anybody here agitated? About half the people generally are. We're not supposed to be agitated all the time, but there's a period when it comes up. And I'm currently a bit agitated. I've been doing what I've been doing for a long time, and I've just been through a whole experience with my mother passing away and with COVID and everything, and I know that I don't want to go back to where I was before. I don't want to go back to doing and working the way I was. There's something new for me. I'll still be involved in the work, but I'll be doing it in a different way. And that's a rite of passage, to create a healthy transition from where I was to where I need to be. and they keep on going our whole lives.
So in Western culture, where we've got this system of education, young boys in particular, we tend to push them into sports and the like. Because we've done that, are we then putting expectations on coaches and teachers and people to bring our boys into young adulthood and young men that maybe haven't been through a similar program themselves and don't have that awareness that's needed to elevate their awareness or their consciousness in such a way that they're members of a community and then themselves go on to be strong role models and leaders rather than get caught up in society. So what's the steps we kind of need to do to unpack some of that? And these things will run parallel for a while, obviously, but there's, like you were saying earlier, there's these interventions that, like your training.
Yeah.
How do we
It's a great question. It's a great question, because the role of coaches and even teachers and scout leaders or group, whatever, is and can be so important. But maybe even just before I answer that, Greg asked me another question about, which I didn't answer, about what's the implication when we don't do rites of passage. And if we look at the staircase model and we're supposed to keep moving up it, and we don't do rites of passage, and we look at boys, if they don't go through a rite of passage and become a young man, which is a whole shift. A boy, it's all about me and I'm the centre of the universe and I don't take responsibility and I want my mother to be my servant and she's there for me. And that's okay in an 8-year-old. But when you get 30, 40, 50-year-olds, and even one, who still think they're the centre of the universe and don't take any responsibility for their actions and think that women are there as possessions and to serve them, that's a big problem. And I have to say, I believe we live in a world that's basically run by boys. And that's a disaster. If we look at some of the political leaders in the world and we go, is that a man or is that a boy? Is that person really doing what's best for society and for the community, or are they thinking about themselves and holding on to power? And how are men treating women? It's not okay. And I don't think we have a problem with patriarchy. I don't think we have a problem with toxic masculinity. I think we have a problem with boys in men's bodies.
Absolutely agree.
Who haven't actually been through healthy rites of passage.
Yeah.
And so we are so far removed from what we could be doing, but we have all the parts there. And so, I think a lot of sports coaches and, teachers have an enormous influence on children, and many of them in a really, really positive way. But if we can understand that there are certain moments in a person's life where we actually need to remove them from the everyday world and go, you are ready to move from being a boy to being a man, or you are ready to move from being an adult to being an elder, or you're, and go and actually guide them through that process using a framework that's been around for tens of thousands of years, which is what I teach in my trainings. If we understand the framework, which is actually really quite simple, and we can take people through it, we will create a transformation and they will step up. It's an opportunity for them to hear stories of other people, to think about who they are or who I am and what I want to become and what I know that's holding me back and that doesn't serve me, and then to actually make a commitment to becoming that person that, is in me and wants to come out of me. And we absolutely could be bringing that back, but first people need to know about it. Even that Greg said earlier, he came along to this program, which he said to us changed his life, but before it, he didn't even know what rites of passage were. So you know, there's a whole, and, you know, we'd like to think that Greg is a, you know, intelligent, worldly, cultured person. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, we need people, first of all, to you know, we know there's a problem. I think that people realise there's a problem. They realise there's a problem with teenagers. They realise there's a problem in the world. They realise blah, blah. But we don't have a lot of solutions, and definitely people don't understand rites of passage and their ability to support people to move up the staircase in a healthy way, which means that wherever they are on the staircase, they'll be functioning in a healthy way. So that means we'll have men who are interested in how much good they can do in the community, and who are interested in having the best relationships possible. You know, all of those things.
I can't tell you, if I'd have had this train when I was 15, tell you what, a lot of different choices.
Or even just people around you that have got the wisdom to guide you. So just that kind of, I don't like to use the word safety net, but you can fail safely, so that you know that there's a support network there that has your best intentions at heart. Because I'm kind of with you, Greg. I kind of felt like I hit the wall there for about 10 years and had nowhere to turn.
Yeah. I mean, I went for a walk at breakfast time this morning with a 34-year-old man, and I met him when he was 13 years old, and he came on our camp with his father. And he wasn't particularly happy to be there. He was grumpy. And then he came back as a returning young man a couple of times. And the first time he came back, he was still grumpy. And the second time he came back, you know, he was great. And then I actually kept contact with him, and I mentored him when he was in his early 20s and struggling with depression and having a hard time. And then he did our leadership training. And then he started working on some of the camps. And now he's actually the program manager of our camps. And, you know, this kid, anything could have happened to him. And, you know, it's obviously not just me, but he had a support network of men around him who were able to hold space for him and guide him and be there for him going. They don't grunt or give me one word. They'll actually tell me. And, you know, that's an extraordinary thing, but that's how it should be. You know, we should be communicating in a healthy way intergenerationally. You know, if I say to them, you know, how are you going to school? They'll tell me. I say, have you been getting in trouble? They'll tell me. You've been doing drugs? They'll tell me. And that then opens a conversation, and it allows us to actually support these young men as they're going through their journeys.
So is that part of the evolution of helping them with their decision-making paradigm? I mean, is that our role as kind of adults looking after these boys going through this transition, not to make the decisions for them, but to perhaps help them with the thought process around what decisions to make? Because we all see young kids now are exposed to probably more worldly content than we were through the media and social media and technology. But the decision making around do I do something or not do it hasn't probably changed that much. Is that where we should be putting a bit of attention and awareness?
Yeah, for me, it's about bringing the community back together. And we can't pretend that we do a rite of passage for these boys over 5 days a week or whatever, and then they're young men and that's it. They've got it all sorted out and they'll be, you know, it's actually just the beginning. You know, I look at it like they go through their rite of passage and they come out as baby men. But they're men. They're not boys. They're baby men. But now it's our role to support them and to be there for them and to listen to them and, you know, all of those things that sort of tie into this whole mentoring thing. And also to realise that it's not just them going through a rite of passage. You know, for a boy to go through a rite of passage and become a young man, his mother and his father also need to step up and give him space to become a young man, rather than treating him as when he was a boy and, you know, trying to stay young themselves. So part of it is, you know, everybody's stepping up. And the idea in a rite of passage is it's actually a community process, and we're all involved. So at the same time as the boys need to be making wise decisions, we as men and elders need to be making wise decisions. You know, what are we going to do with the next 5 or 10 years of our lives? Are we just going to do exactly the same as what we did for the last 5 or 10 years? Or do we have a different role? You know, my sons are 28 and 30. I'll be a grandfather hopefully in the next few years. I want to be a good, active, involved grandfather. And to do that, I'm going to have to let some other things go. And, you know, I wrote a model, this thing about between a boy and a man, which I've already alluded to, but then there's another level, which is boy, man, elder. You know, what does it mean to be an elder in our community? And how can we be a healthy elder? And that's a hugely important role. And in fact, one of the big ones that's missing, and the whole thing breaks down when you don't have elders, I believe. You know, we all know that there's an issue with our boys. We just see the mental health statistics in the paper all the time and we hear about it. That's pretty common knowledge. There's a lot less knowledge of the fact that our elders are also in a great crisis and struggling with mental health issues and depression and loneliness and lack of purpose. But what we rarely talk about is that the issue with the elders and the young is completely related, and that actually they have an enormous role together. And when you get the old and the young together, the young gain wisdom and knowledge from being with the elders, which they need, and they get seen by the elders. And the elders get energy and vitality, which is what they need. They get that from the young. And they also get a role and a purpose. And then, not only is that healthy, it frees up the ones in the middle, the parents and the adults, to go out and do their great mission in the world, which they all feel like they need to do. It's like a perfect scenario. But when we don't have the elders, the parents are like overwhelmed and stressed. The kids are running amok or just sitting on their computers all day. And the elders are, you know, off in their RVs or on the golf course or having holidays somewhere, or depressed and in old people's homes. You know, we could be doing it so much better. Anyway, how did we get to that? I could go on about that for a long time.
That's a great topic. Your passion just came through in spades. It's that role of integrating, I think, that they play. And you said the word wisdom and respect, and they're probably two things that aren't given anywhere near enough attention in society.
Yeah, but also it's about creating a healthy ecosystem in a community. I'll tell you a quick story. You know, I do a lot of public speaking, and I've been invited to 3 festivals to give talks on whether the music festival is a rite of passage. And one of them I went to, Lost Paradise. And all the kids there are between 20 and 25 years of age. 98% of the people at the festival are 20, 25 years of age. And I was staying in the area with the presenters, and every day we had to walk through the general camping area to get to the dining hall. And we'd walk through, and over about 3 days, we saw it transform into a stinky, disgusting camping area that looked just like the worst nightmare of a 25-year-old's bedroom you could ever imagine. You know, there were bags of rubbish that were fly-blown and rotting meat on the ground and beer cans, and it stank. It was disgusting. And then the next year I went and gave a talk at Woodford Folk Festival, and the thing about Woodford is there are people there from babies all the way up to the elderly. And you walk through that camping area early in the morning, and the kids will be sleeping in the kids area, and there'll be some people out sweeping the area, and there'll be someone else fixing up the tarpaulins and the tents. You know, you've got a whole ecosystem right from young to elders, and they all support each other, and it works. And when you when you separate into the young, the mid, you know, and you go into an old people's home, what's the first thing that you get hit by? The smell. They smell. And when you separate all the different parts of the community, it starts to kind of smell not good. But when you have one community, it doesn't smell, it actually functions. And, you know, a big part of Rites of Passage is around recreating that sense of community and everybody recognising that we all have a role and we all have a place in that community and that it's all interconnected.
We'll talk about this before with Michael and you know, where some of the stuff may have come from, because, and that's the biggest thing I learned out of doing the Rites of Passage was the lack of community that we have in the Western world, and the divorce rates are around 45% first-time marriages and 60% in second-time marriages. So you're breaking the community at the start, and then you've got, like when Michael and I were growing up, and yourself, Arne, is we're told what success is, and it's driven from material stuff, like go and be, you know, the pilots, and you know, earn this and
accumulate possessions.
My God, is it so wrong?
The more money, the better. Yeah. Money equals success.
Yeah. How wrong have we got it?
Yeah, what a crappy.
Oh my God, completely wrong. But which is what's been really interesting with COVID, and everybody having to go home again. And the big thing that I've seen is that people have found it really difficult being at home with their families, but also they've found that there's something really beautiful about being at home with their families. And, you know, we outsource our children's upbringing, not only their education, but their upbringing. And all of a sudden the kids are at home. And even the kids who've left home, a lot of them have had to come back home again. And I know it's been challenging for a lot of people. And once again, we could have done it so much better. That's the tragedy. You know, we could have done this period so well. And some people did, and some people haven't. Some people have, you know, had amazing conversations and done a lot of things together and really created a great community in their home, and other people have, you know, just had the TV and the computers and drunk a lot more than they normally would, and, you know, I think missed out on a big opportunity. But
now I want to get on to your program in a second. I know Michael's got a couple of questions that I think are fabulous, and especially around some Indigenous stuff that you're doing, which I got to witness firsthand, which was simply just the most powerful stuff I've ever seen in my whole life, right? And especially around some of the stories, and he's got a book there around some Dreamtime stuff. So do you want to ask those couple of questions, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I was lucky that my parents gave me, I don't know if you can see it, but it's the Dreamtime book there that they left for me. And these are beautiful stories of the Indigenous culture and how they share different elements of life, and the messages embedded in them. It's not, I don't feel like it's common in our culture that we use stories as training and passing on lessons. And a bit like you said, we kind of outsource the decision making and the growth, like we said before, I guess, to all of the teachers and coaches, and maybe they're not themselves sufficiently or adequately trained. What's the difference in the Indigenous cultures, and where's the gap? What have we missed? And how do we then start to reintegrate some of that so that we haven't just got this unrealistic pipe dream that tomorrow it's all going to be nice and we're living in a community? Because we need to really put in a lot of work here. There's strong, powerful forces working against us with big agendas around isolation and attention and consumption. So getting back to the grassroots, where are we planting seeds with stories and love and wisdom and all of these important things that are going to start to generate this change and momentum that we so desperately need?
Yeah, it's a big question, and, you know, to me it comes down to, you know, how do we get this back out into the mainstream again? And I think we have to start, well, I think we start in all sorts of different ways, And I, because I've been doing the work for 25 years, I've definitely seen a shift in awareness from people that not only do we have a problem, but we need to do something about it, and that rites of passage are a potential answer. You know, most of my leadership trainings nowadays are full. You know, people are looking for this work. And I think, you know, you mentioned the Indigenous communities. I think they realised since always that family and community is the most important thing. And keeping healthy structure within the community is what is critical to the survival of the community and was prioritised. And they also very much saw life stages as being, you know, when you're a kid, you knew you were a kid and you were allowed to act like a kid. And then when you became an adult, you were an adult and you know, did what adults did. And then there was a certain point where they said, right, now you're an elder. And, you know, it was actually very structured. And we've lost that structure. And I believe we can bring it back. I don't think we're trying to go back to being an Indigenous community, but I think we can bring what we've lost is the values of understanding that we're not just here for ourselves, we're actually here to be part of our community, and to support that community and the people in the community and the broader community. And I think by, you know, for me, it's about education, talking about it, doing podcasts, doing public speaking, writing books, running, you know, just media, social media, all of that stuff to find ways to get it out there. And the more people who talk about it and the more people who experience it, hopefully we eventually get to a tipping point. And I think, you know, each person can only do what they can do, and there's lots and lots of different ways of doing it. And yes, it's a huge challenge, but I think for me, you know, it's a big enough challenge and important enough that I'm prepared to, you know, give away my original profession of being a doctor and go, actually, this is more important for me.
Is that because at our core, we kind of seek contentment, happiness, fulfillment, and we know that that comes from being more heart focused? So we know that the emotions attached to that heart focus are love and belonging, and you said community, where a lot of the world seems to be around head focused, attention, distraction, doing things for me now, which in the long term don't give us that feeling. And
denial of realities of life, and denial of death, and denial of aging, and, you know, and that's, you know, I think we went off track quite a long time ago, and we've just sort of continued off track. But hopefully more and more people are realising, hey, what we're doing is not working. We're destroying the world. We're destroying ourselves. We're destroying natural resources. Like, you just can't keep doing that forever and think that there's never going to be a payback moment. And I think a lot of people are aware of it. And like you say, there are some pretty strong and dark forces that are, you know, pushing the agenda of economic growth and materialism and everything. And hopefully more and more people are waking up. Hopefully Corona, this period, is a time when more and more people wake up. I don't know that they have, and my concern is that if they haven't, that the next event has to be even more dramatic. But, you know, I think it's just up to all of us to be doing everything we can. And, you know, for me, it's a priority, because it's not only about us now. You know, we've got children. And what's their future going to be like? And what's their children's children, who are our grandchildren? So they're very much in our field of, you know, awareness and life. You know, what sort of world are we going to leave for them? And, you know, I'm not sure if it's not already too late. But I'm very clear that I'm not prepared to give up and say, you know, it's hopeless.
Yeah, and this is exactly what's inspired Greg and myself to go down this path of having these conversations and trying to educate people, having discussions on topics that you don't typically have, that aren't cool to have around the water cooler, but they're the ones that create a more meaningful existence, or at least that's the idea. And the word I'd probably use is intervention. You know, this is our opportunity. There's a shift going on in the world. We're at a tipping point, and let's balance it in our favour rather than sit around and do nothing. Let's drive change. Let's not wait for someone else to stand up.
Yeah, well, we have to drive change because the people in power, you know, government and big business clearly are not going to.
And the thing I find fascinating there is each of those people goes home at night and they're a human being and an individual. Once they take off the corporate veil, there's no doubt there's a beating heart there. We just need to tune into that and get them operating to the same frequency as the rest of us.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Change tact a little bit.
Got one question, one more.
Go on, you jump in.
No,
I've got one more.
I'll finish off with the stages of Rites of Passage to go through that, and then all Arne's work that's coming up and what he's got going, his programs, and how they can contact him, and a bit of a call to action to get in touch with Arne. So one more. Otherwise, we'll be here all night, and we'll keep talking.
Well, all right. Well, I'll ask you a bit of a maybe a little bit more of a spiritual one then. So Greg and I often have these conversations around how are you most effective in crafting or creating change in people. So my thought process has been, and I believe that we carry with us everything from our ancestors, and that includes all of their experiences, all their traumas, and that's embedded in our DNA. I'm trying to understand and unpack when we have children. Often we pass on, if we haven't been through a healing process or a rite of passage like this, we're often passing on some of those challenges for them to carry through, and then their journey involves healing that, and we might be doing that simultaneously, as opposed to maybe in a healthy community, there's a process to work through those situations, heal some of those traumas that we've carried with us, and then pass on a different type of experience to our children as they go through. And then over the course of a couple of generations, we've created a fundamentally different culture. I'd be curious in your thoughts on the roles and how we step out of the shadow of our parents, as opposed to putting children in an environment where they're surrounded by some healthy decision-making models and role models, where that trauma that they've carried forward maybe doesn't affect them so much, and we give them the ability to work with it, experience it, unpack it, release it, and so forth.
All right, nice simple question to sort of bring it home on, but I'm happy to.
A clumsy way to ask the question.
I'm happy to jump into it, and I may not exactly answer the question, but this is what I will say, that I believe that we do carry stuff, and we carry stuff from this lifetime definitely, and you know, whatever amount of stuff we carry that we've brought in from our parents, grandparents, great-great-grandparents, and some of that's healthy and some of that is the wounds and the baggage. And a rite of passage is a period of time when our psyche, our mind, which is normally pretty closed, opens up. And it therefore creates an opportunity for us to look at previous rites of passage and things that have affected us in the past, and to decide whether we're going to take them forwards with us. So a rite of passage gives us an incredible opportunity to sort of clean up our psyches, our belief systems, our core values. And it's like, I might have had something that happened to me when I was young that made me mistrust men. So I go through my life mistrusting men, and there might be a man who wants to come and do good for me, but I can't get that good because I don't trust him. And then when I go on a rite of passage and I open up, I can see that thing of not trusting men. And I therefore have a choice as to whether I'm going to continue on with that or whether I'm going to let it go. I actually spoke to a man today who I haven't spoken to for probably nearly 25 years. He's a doctor, and I had an online doctor's appointment, which I've never had before. And he came on a camp 25 years ago. And I said, hey, I remember when you came on camp with your son. And he goes, yeah, that changed my relationship with my son forever. And he said, because I was a single dad and I used to just see my son on holidays. I was a holiday dad. And when he used to come, I used to try and get him to do the things that I wanted him to do and I thought he should do. But when we were on that camp and I got to see him for the first time with other boys and with other people, it was like a light bulb came on for me, and I realised he had a method in what he was doing, and I didn't have to be pushing onto him what I thought. I could just let him be and actually focus on just having a relationship with him. And he said to me, that changed our relationship forever. You know, and it was such a beautiful thing to hear. But this man was carrying something from his past that he had to teach his son things and he had to do things, and you know, his son would have been carrying stuff, and they got into this place that we created where we set up the scenario, and we didn't tell them this stuff, but just because he was open, he was able to see his son in a different way and then actually take that into the future, and it changed their relationship for the better. And so for me, by creating healthy rites of passage, what we're doing is we're actually giving people periods of time to assess what their core values and belief systems are and to decide what they want them to be going forwards. And each time we do that, we create a more healthy system. And if we can do that periodically and ongoing, then we can potentially transform what I consider is an unhealthy system into a healthy system.
Good segue. So your framework, and I'll get you to explain it because it's simple. And the best thing I love about this is it's simple. So basically you've got separation as the first stage. Then you've got story and transformation as the next stage. Then you've got transition, and then you've got vision and honoring. Can you just, and then integration. So, and then learning. So can you, that's pretty much it, isn't it? That's all the stages?
Well, it's not bad. I might sort of clean it up a little bit in the description, but yes, you obviously did listen at the course, Greg, which I'm happy about.
Tell us a bit, why the simplicity of that and how those stages work, and probably explain it a bit better than I can.
Sure. Well, the three stages of a rite of passage were actually recognised and named by Arnold van Gennep, who was a Belgian anthropologist in the 1800s and travelled to all these indigenous communities around the world, and he recognised they were all creating rites of passage, and they all had the same stages of separation, a transformation, and a return or integration. And the separation meant that when someone was ready to go through a rite of passage, they were taken out of the community and put into some level of container, some space to go through a transformation. They would go through the transformation, and then they would be brought back and reintegrated into the community on a different level. So they might leave as a boy or a girl and come back as a young man or a young woman. And they wouldn't come back until they'd been through the transformation. And my work has been about identifying in that middle stage of the transformation, what do you have to do with a person for it to actually work, to create a transformation? And I've identified that there are 4 things in common that happen. And the first is the sharing of stories. And stories are used as a way of passing on wisdom and knowledge and also building community. The second thing is there's always a challenge or an ordeal. The third is a recognition of the gifts of and the spirit of the person who's going through it. And the fourth is a vision for how you're going to be when you come out of the rite of passage, when you come out of the transformation. And then, when these things have happened, it's really important that you integrate back to your community and that your community sees you as having been through this rite of passage and having changed.
Much better. See?
Very eloquent too.
But that's the simplicity and why it works. I mean, it is, you know, I can take, this is not me just going, hey, I've heard of the third, but I saw firsthand other people heal stuff that, you know, and talking to some of these guys afterwards, and it was just amazing. I went there to learn about a training method, and I came away learning about myself and how I wanted to be a father. I was completely blindsided, which was great. It was fantastic, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I hope you're still doing this when my son Oscar turns 13, 14, because we're booking in, mate. With that, so
we'll be doing it.
Tell us 3 to 5 things, or top 3 things that listeners could do right now if they obviously can't get to training, and that we'll get to how to get to you in a second. What they could do right now in their lives to improve father-son relationships or mother-daughter relationships. What could they do right now that will
any relationship?
Any relationship.
Any relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a number of things that I would recommend. So we have something called a golden check-in, which is just when we meet with someone, instead of just, how you going? Good. Actually honestly sharing how we're going. So I call it a golden check-in, and it's on my website. A G stands for how am I going overall. O is what's been occupying me, what have I been doing. L is for what have I liked. D is what's been difficult. E is there anything I'm excited or worried about that's coming up. And N, is there anything that I need, any support I need.
Let's go.
So we talk about how am I going, what have I been doing, what have I liked, what's been difficult, am I excited or nervous about anything, and do I need any help? And it's pretty simple, and it's golden. We can remember the word golden, and after a while you sort of get used to what those letters stand for. And it's just a great way of actually knowing how people are going. So that's one thing that people can do. Yeah. And another thing that people can do is just start sharing stories. Really talk to people about their stories and find out other people's stories. That's a really great thing to do. And then the third thing, and I'll keep it at 3, is just practice telling people what you love about them and what gifts you see in them and what some of their super talents are. So for example, Greg, tell me, what are some of the things that you really love about Michael? Tell me just a couple of things, keep it reasonably brief. And Michael's just got to listen. See, he's not allowed to see how he's going to try and stop it or make it a joke or whatever. Michael, you just got to sit there, not say a word, and listen. Greg.
See, Michael, I love your passion with this stuff. I love how you actually have a really core want to change the lives of people. And this is not about Michael McNair. This is so far further from the truth. This is about a calling that you've actually taken up, and you've actually shown courage to actually step on this path, with me, because, it's a tough gig to do, right? And I really admire what you've done. And I think how you've brought up your children and the way you've provided for your family and brought up 3 very well functioning children is hard to do. And I think you've done an amazing job as a father and a partner, because you're always putting everybody else first apart from you. And I've been just blessed to share the journey with you over the last, 3 or 4 years, and share some very intimate, knowledgeable experience with groups of people. And you know, it's an amazing thing, and I'm just blessed to have you in my life.
Wow, thank you, brother.
Correct.
I'm tearing up.
Thank you.
That's there.
Well,
That's
Michael,
beautiful.
what about you tell us a couple of things briefly, no longer than Greg, even a bit shorter, about Greg, though, that you love and admire about him?
Oh, look, that's an easy one. Greg, for me, played a pivotal role in my life. And I guess what I saw was someone who's really courageous, someone who's stepped out of what's seen as a traditional role in society, and is there to help people that really are vulnerable. Just doesn't take a backward step, and really puts himself out there. And by that I mean putting other people first. So the deep need to heal others, knowing that that's going to make the world a better place for all of us, is just amazing. And a bit like what you said about me, mate, I think I see you in the family environment, and I can see the passion you've got for your wife and your kids. And I remember when I first met you, you had that beautiful dog, and I could just see the love in the house, and it reminded me of you know, when I was a young dad myself. And yeah, there's so much passion there, and I grow off your energy, I think. And yeah, you've been a real rock for me, and I know you have for a hell of a lot of people. So thank you.
Beautiful, fellas.
That's what.
Imagine if we could get people doing golden check-ins, sharing their stories, and making a habit of telling each other what they love about each other. There you go. That would simple,
not
beautiful.
a bad place to be, is it?
Not a bad place at all.
That's the simplicity of it. It doesn't have to be, you know, complicated. So, mate, tell us about how people can get in touch with you, how they can do your courses, completely plug everything you've got, seriously.
Yeah, sure.
Go for it.
So a great starting point is our website, the Rites of Passage Institute.org. Rites of Passage, RITES. If people Google Rites of Passage Institute, they will find it. And we run programs. We run programs for fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, mothers and sons. We run leadership trainings to support people to learn about the Rite of Passage framework, and to be able to start to create programs in their own way, in their own community, their own programs. Due to COVID, most of our programs are postponed at the moment, but they will definitely be back. And in the meantime, we're doing more and more stuff online. We've just put up our online leadership framework training, which talks about, it's a Rite of Passage journey and goes in detail through the different elements of the Rite of Passage, and, you know, really supports people to get a good understanding, and has some activities in there for people to do. We'll be putting up a mother and son online program that people can do. We've got a Parents and Children Growing Together program that we put out at the beginning of COVID. So our intention, and we also have a Rites of Passage community that we want people to join, so that we can keep giving them information about how they can support their children, how they can support themselves, how they can support each other. And, you know, this is all about supporting as many people as possible to be able to do as well as possible. So hopefully people will check that out. There's a book that I wrote called The Making of Men. It's also available through the website or online, or, you know, around the place. Because we want, as I said, we want this to be normal. And so, well, not too normal, but you know what I mean. Any way that we can support people to get involved in the work, we'll do it. So yeah, please come to our website.
Perfect, mate. Well, I am very, very grateful that you were able to talk to us tonight. I know that a lot of our listeners will get a lot out of what we've talked about, and it's just amazing, you know, to be in your presence with you and share this space and share the message is something that I'm, you know, just eternally grateful that there's people like you on this planet, because of people like you, the place is, I see the joy in what can come of where we're at, and you're a lighthouse amongst the darkness in some ways. So look, just absolute amazing work that you do, and yeah, just a big thank you, especially from me to you, for just being who you are.
Yeah, totally
Thank
agree,
you.
mate. I wrote down
Pleasure.
something while we were chatting: heal the people, heal the culture, and you're leading the way. And thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, fellas.
All right. So for everybody else,
Nice
just
talking to you.
if you want to hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, if you're listening on the podcast, subscribe on that too. We've got even more good content coming up. If you want to see Arne again, just inundate us. We can talk about this for hours, right? Yeah, thank you for joining us again, and we look forward to hearing from you, Michael. Any final words?
No, thank you, everybody. It's wonderful sharing space with you again.
Thanks, guys.